How are young people affording houses? I saved money by living with my parents. And then my brother. And then my parents again in a 3-year span. I realize I'm very lucky to have such a badass family. The vast majority had some form of outside help. Typically down payment assistance provided by parents. That's the biggest hurdle for most people. Outside of having a high enough income to qualify for a mortgage. It's easy to save when you have generous parents. If your parents pay for college. If your parents let you live in their house for a few years after you become an adult. If your parents helped you buy a car. Then saving is a lot easier. Every other day a variation of this question is asked. How do people afford X? The answer is that they make more money than you, have outside support, or generational wealth. In Midwest, moved to a town, paid about 900 mo for a 2BR1 ba apt in a nice neighborhood with underground parking. Had our second kid, we found a house for $1,400 per mo rent. I showed my brother, who is part of a dink marriage. Dual income, no kids. And they probably make north of $500,000 together. Very career driven. This was mid-2020. He calls me a week later. Look, if you save up for 10% down, we'll match it. Then a friend of mine who lives in the town told me that he and his wife looked at a house on a whim. And decided they, and their 4 kids, were going to buy it. They'd been living in their 4/1.5, 1950 home. Very small rooms. House for 10 years. He knew we were sort of looking and asked if I'd be interested. My wife was very much so, and we ended up buying it. And a realtor friend set it up so he could do for sale by owner. And the realtor would representative us and only take 2% commission. And we got the house for $10,000 lower than it appraised at. In 2020, being able to buy a house for its asking price was rare. Let alone below. We ended up paying $230,000. Its estimate is around $280,000 now. It's a bit expensive for the amount of house it is. But it's in a very nice town. In a quiet neighborhood with a school 2 blocks away and is 3 minutes from the interstate. So in short, we were able to afford a house in our 30s. Only because of an affluent family member who spurned us to save up some money. And being lucky enough to have a friend selling a house that perfectly suited our needs, who was motivated to sell quickly so he could make an offer on the house they wanted without a contingency. Contingency equals making an offer that's contingent on the sale of your current home. 3.5% down plus closing costs plus PMI. There are plenty of people who can easily afford a mortgage, especially compared to rent. What they cannot afford is to save $75,000. $100,000 as a down payment. Dual income, no kids. Not living in an expensive part of the country and first-time house buying government programs. I just found one I qualified for today that requires a 0 down payment and has the lowest interest rate I've ever seen. As someone who bought a house in my mid-20s, here's how I did it. I had parents who paid for my college. So I graduated debt-free from a top-notch university. I got a good-paying job out of undergrad. $70K. But I lived like I was making $25K. Doing this, I maxed out my retirement accounts for a few years. I married a woman with great earning potential. This helped with paying the mortgage, but not with making the down payment. Though she was making $100K at age 25, she had graduated with a lot of student loan debt that she had aggressively been paying down. We put only 10% down on our home. We borrowed from my 401k to make the down payment. We considered withdrawing from my IRA as well, but my dad loaned me what I would have withdrawn from the IRA. He did this with a few stipulations. I paid him 4.5% interest. My mortgage was at 3.3%. If he needed the money, I would withdraw from the IRA to pay him back. If I were making more than minimum payments on any loan, it had to be to him. Down payments provided by parents. Saved money living with parents to pay off school debt and for down payment for 7 years. No real high expenditures or even a ton of small spending. Most money from working went into savings and helping family for some emergencies. Probably not the most exciting 20s, but now I'm a homeowner that is very grateful to my parents. FHA requires very little down payment. I think I paid $5,000 or so down a few years ago. Talk with a realtor. Where they are is also important. My friend bought 2 properties, but both are in a state that has less expensive price tags than where I live. He's working like 3 jobs to pay everything off, though. Any of your friends former military? I know former military gets a pretty nice housing deal. I don't know all the specifics, but it's a pretty hefty loan or whatever. It depends on where they live. In my area, you need about $200,000 for a down payment on a middle-class single-family home. Young people in their 20s aren't buying these homes in my area unless they come from wealth or inherited wealth. In other parts of the country, you might only need $520,000 for a down payment on a comparable home. This is not far off from what young people are already spending on cars. I don't know how they afford anything. All restaurants, bars, clubs are always busy. Parking lots filled with new cars. 20-somethings claiming to earn $150,000 on Reddit. Yet the data shows it's more like $40,000. I was 22, 24 now, when I bought my first house priced at $250,000 at 3% in the Midwest. Got a credit card when I was 18. And started to build my credit. Didn't go to college and bought my car in cash to not sit in any debt. Working in IT was making $60,000 when I got my credit checked, and by the time I closed I got a new job making $80,000. Took me over a year to find a house, but I was able to do it mostly because my parents didn't charge me rent when I was living at their house past 18. I still paid for my food, insurance, and bills, but not having to pay rent was huge. Edit. Changed some wording. Depends on where you live. I'm in a city in the Midwest. Bought my 2K SQFT house for $80,000 a couple years ago. Also, some people are just better with their money than others. Or they could have had help from family. Maybe they got lucky. The first house I bought was with my sister. We bought into an auction and got a 2,500 SQFT for $10,000. I was 18 and she was 22. The house was in good shape, just very outdated aesthetically. I'm 26. My own 3-bedroom house. 2 paid-off cars. Fiancé. No kids. I moved out when I was 18. Lived on my own for 4 years until my mom bought a new house for herself and I moved into her old one and took over bills and repairs, maintenance, since the condition had went downhill for a long time. When the time came, we found our own home and had enough saved to pay off the cars, and she was generous enough to give us a down payment for our new home, which was $112,000 in the Midwest. Kind of a ghetto town though. But it's a very nice small home for us and our dogs. So like everyone else has stated, it's a mix of being somewhat responsible financially, but a good portion of it is outside help. I rarely ever believe someone our age when they say they bought it themselves. But I still thank her at least monthly because my mortgage is half of what my friends are paying in rent. My sister and her husband bought a house. Their mortgage payments are super high, like $3,300, but he makes a lot as a state trooper. It really depends on the state. And she's a lawyer, so they can pull it off. He didn't have any student debt, but after law school she has a ton. He's just really good with money, I guess, so they can pull it off. They usually have rich parents, come from generational wealth that has associated privileges, like financial connections and knowledge, good credit, or better yet, no need to even worry about it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.